Hey, what's cracking lacking people? What's on my mind today? Well, Nintendo is. I mean, that's nothing new for me, but with the Nintendo Switch inbound, I'd like to talk about Nintendo of the past and mostly people's reactions to when they try something new, especially with their software. People, for the most part, don't like change. We grow accustomed to the things we like, and if they radically change, then we would normally go flip mode about it. As a lifelong Nintendo fan, I've been used to Nintendo experimenting with their IPs in many ways, and still to this day they continue to experiment. This is something I don't want Nintendo to ever stop doing, and I want to try and put across my points as to why we should all embrace it. As I just said, Nintendo has always experimented with their IPs, and for the most part we've never complained about it. I mean, just look at Mario. Put aside his platforming games for the moment. Mario has been represented in so many different types of genres that I've lost count. Mario is that type of character that remains versatile, and we, for the most part, happily accept him in whatever game style he comes in. Now, naturally, we like to see him in his more classic 2D and 3D outings. And consider those genres as his main playstyle. But the good thing is, those games are still offered, and we hungrily lap them up whenever they are released. But if you think about it, the vast majority of Nintendo's characters have appeared in spin-offs, or other games outside of what would be considered their main game genre, and Nintendo consoles have been all the better for it. Without those risks, those efforts to try something new with existing IPs and characters, we've never had games like the Donkey Kong Country series, or Mario Kart, the Metroid Primes, Paper Marios, WarioWares, Luigi Mansions, Pokemon Snap, Kirby's Air Ride. Anyway, you get the point. And even the Super Mario Bros. Series, if you think about it, although Mario starred as Jumpman in Donkey Kong in 1981, his next game after that was the Mario Bros. Arcade game, which was, some form of mixed platform multiplayer game. If Nintendo, didn't think to really change things up when launching the NES and put Mario in his own adventure, like full platform game, where would they be today? It's important for any company to utilize their IPs in many different ways, and as fans and consumers, we should be willing to embrace these things, even if at first we turn our noses up at the idea. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a difference with experimenting with an existing IP and churning out a crap product afterwards that is based on that IP. One game that comes to mind recently for Nintendo is Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival. I mean, that game could have been a charming and fun take on the Animal Crossing IP, but ended up being a limp-wristed pile of trash. The funny thing is, even though that game was trash, the game itself, wasn't broken in any way. Still, in a way, showing that they put some care into it. But that still doesn't justify what the overall product should or could have been. The industry has changed a lot, as we know, and so have the vocal people who play video games today. People seem less willing to embrace change and pretty much want more of the same, but bigger and better. We all remember the general outcry when Metroid Prime Federation Force got announced. People were not happy for many reasons, but I feel the main two reasons were: one, why is this using the Prime name when Samus is not even in it? And two, why are you giving us this 3DS multiplayer game when we haven't seen a mainline Metroid title starring Samus since the controversial release of Metroid Other M back in 2010? I was in the latter camp for one reason, and that was the Wii U. The ideas I had running around in my head for another Metroid Prime title, using this console, were overwhelming. But then it quickly came to our attention that the Wii U was destined to fail for many reasons, most of which I personally disagree against. But once again, that's another story. Personally, story aside, I didn't mind Metroid Other M, but it certainly was no Metroid Prime, in terms of that caliber. But it was still a solid title and had a lot of Metroid elements in it with some pretty good boss battles. And feel free to completely disagree with me on that game in the comment section below, because as I said, the game is very controversial. Going back to Federation Force, Federation Force is one of those few exceptions in my book where Nintendo attempted to try something slightly different with an existing IP, but made the mistake of waiting too long to try it without offering their fanbase and consumers a main entry in what made them fans of Metroid in the first place. I'm not against the idea of Federation Force, far from it. Nintendo needs more multiplayer focused games like this. I mean, hell, remember Metroid Prime Hunters? But the execution of Federation Force was just wrong, and people had the right to be confused and slightly deflated. So as I mentioned, fans went flip mode. I believe the game tanked in sales, and we'll probably not see another game like that, which in its own way attempted to expand on the Metroid universe. Something that I've personally wanted for a long time and will be gutted if it doesn't happen again. But luckily, Metroid is one of those Nintendo IPs that Nintendo themselves roll out on a semi-regular basis, which is not what can be said for some of their other IPs. For example, FZero is one of the most requested IPs that people want Nintendo to bring back. The last console offering we saw was the absolutely sublime FZero GX on the GameCube, which came out over 13 years ago. But what if Nintendo decided not to make another racing game? What if the return of F-Zero came in the form of an action adventure title, say similar to the Mass Effect series, just as an example. No racing involved whatsoever. Instead, you played as Captain Falcon, who is in fact a bounty hunter by trade, and you'd have to travel to different planets as the story unfolded and hunt down some bad guys, with the combat being a third-person shooter or something like that. How many people would go flip mode about that? Would we be justified to go nuts about it because we haven't seen an F-Zero racing game for 13 years? As another example, how about a Hyrule Olympics game or something like that, Don't laugh, I mean, think about it. You could do the most obvious things like horseback racing and archery, then throw in some other things like fishing tournaments, Zora, swimming racing, Goron ball racing, when they curl up into their balls and roll downhill, sword fighting competitions, etc, etc. Zelda has all these great little side games and gameplay mechanics that could easily lend themselves to a spin-off of this nature, and I think it would be great, especially if it was online and with local play as well. It makes me beg for it to use though the Wiimote and Nunchuck. Wii Sports Resort gave a great example of how fun that could be. Sometimes you have to step back and ask yourself, what do you really want? And most of the time it'll be more of the same, because that's what you're familiar with. It's what you like, and if the last game was that good, then you naturally want more of it. This is what I love about Nintendo. They listen to their fans sometimes, sometimes I say, but most of the time they go off and do whatever they want, and for the most part, we're happy that they did, because we would never have thought about a Donkey Kong Country. We would never have thought about turning Donkey Kong into a platform game like that. We would never have thought about a Metroid Prime, a Hyrule Warriors, a Link's crossbow training, and yeah, that game was good. And even from a graphical standpoint, we would never have thought about a Wind Waker. As fans, most of the time we don't have a clue what we want, and sometimes it's best just to let the music makers make the music, then for us to listen and decide whether we like it or not. Save your judgment till you've seen it and preferably played it. This is something even I struggle with adhering to this day, but I continue to try myself. So, what are your thoughts? Are you with or against established IPs jumping into completely different genres? Although I focused on Nintendo in this video, this for me applies to generally all developers. Even if it's not a Nintendo game series, are there other established game IPs you'd like to see expanded into different genres? As an example, perhaps a full Destiny Sparrow racing game, a complete retail game separate by itself, Sparrow racing game with leagues and customizable vehicles. How about a real-time strategy version of Battlefield or Call of Duty? Or even perhaps a Dark Souls, Bloodborne beat-em-up in the vein of Soul Calibur or something like that. As always, thanks for watching, and I look forward to your comments below. Peace!